Last year, I put the M4 Max MacBook Pro head-to-head against an RTX 5090 laptop featuring the Razer Blade 16, and each had their own strengths and shortcomings. But now Apple has dropped the M5 Pro and M5 Max refresh, and I've been really fortunate to get my hands on the absolute top spec M5 Max MacBook Pro sitting in front of me with 120 gigabytes of unified memory and 4 terabytes of SSD. And today, I'm putting it up against some of the fastest Windows laptops on the market to see if Apple's efficiency-first approach can actually compete with some of the power-hungry CPUs out there. We're talking Intel CPUs that chug 139 watts to Strix Halo, to Strix Point, and even see how much of a performance improvement you're getting over the previous generation M4 Max MacBook Pro. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. This laptop isn't geared towards most people. It's really for those who are craving the best multi-core performance in both CPU and GPU workloads that also happen to be in the Apple ecosystem. Now, on paper, you are getting some improvements over the M4 Max, most notably in the CPU core department. So M4 Max came in two flavors, standard 14-core CPU or 16-core as an upgrade option. But this time, Apple has maintained a single 18-core config across the board. Fun fact, the M5 Pro shares the same core count as the M5 Max. So I'm assuming the performance between the M5 Max and the M5 Pro are going to be similar in CPU workloads. Now, there has been some confusion around the core layout of the M5 Pro and M5 Max chips, so let me clear this up real quick. The 18-core CPU consists of 6 supercores and 12 performance cores. Some people thought that the performance cores were just rebranded efficiency cores, but that's actually not the case. I'll leave a link down below to an article by John Gruber at the Daring Fireball, and I think he broke it down pretty well. But here's the gist. Apple actually introduced a new 3-tier architecture. So the base M5 chip debuted last year on the 14-inch MacBook Pro has traditional efficiency cores and super cores. And those super cores are basically the upgraded version of what used to be called performance cores. But here's where it gets really interesting. The M5 Pro and M5 Max have ditched the efficiency cores entirely. Instead, you get 6 super cores for maximum single-thread performance, plus 12 performance cores that are optimized for multi-threaded workloads, and they do so efficiently. I hope that makes sense. As for the rest of the specs, the GPU layout has remained the same and the memory configurations remain the same as well. However, the memory bandwidth has been increased by roughly 12%. They've also added a custom N1 chip found on the iPhone 17 series to this lineup. So this basically encapsulates the latest connectivity features like Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6 support. But look, specs only convey half the story. Let's actually put this thing to the test to see how it actually performs against the competition. And for that, we'll be going head-to-head against the previous generation 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M4 Max chip. We also have the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the base M5 chip, the HP ZBook Ultra G1A featuring AMD's Strix Halo, more specifically the Ryzen AI Max Plus 395 with 120 gigabytes of memory. We also have the Razer Blade 16 with the Ryzen AI 9 HX370 paired to an RTX 5090 laptop GPU, and the Alienware 16 Area 51 with Intel's Ultra 9 275HX paired to an RTX 5080 laptop GPU. Now, the first thing that I need to address here is the much faster storage on these new M5 Pro and M5 Max MacBook Pros. Apple has switched over to Gen 5 NVMe SSDs, and the performance is almost double compared to the previous generation. It's certainly a benefit for those who are working with larger video files, raw photos, or massive data sets. Now, in terms of CPU performance, we're going to start with some synthetic testing to establish a baseline. The M5 Max is about 8% faster than M4 Max. It's not massive, all right? But remember, we're also getting 2 extra cores here. Also, keep in mind that the M5 Max chugs around the same amount of power as M4 Max, so any performance improvement within the same power envelope is always welcome. Single-core performance also saw some nice bumps. I would say it's roughly 10 to 15% faster than M4 Max. The M5 on the 14-inch MacBook Pro is no slouch here either. It's actually holding up really well against the Max, but you can also see how much catching up Intel and AMD have to do. Now, where things really start to shine is in real-world CPU workloads. In Blender, Houdini, and Handbrake, the M5 Max is easily one of the fastest, if not the fastest laptop that we've ever come across. It's absolutely wild to see these kinds of numbers from a laptop that's only 0.66 inches thin. That Alienware Air 51 with Intel's Ultra 9 275HX is chugging around 139 watts, while the M5 Max is just sipping under 60 watts, while being mostly ahead in these multi-core tests. That is insane efficiency. If you look at GPU-accelerated workloads, it also reveals M5 Max's true strength. In applications like Blender and Handbrake, it outpaces discrete GPUs while consuming a fraction of the power. Now, the platform limitation argument is inevitable, and it's also legitimate too. If your workflow relies exclusively on Windows, then Apple isn't the solution. However, for users whose applications are both cross-compatible with Windows and Mac OS, the performance advantage here is very hard to ignore. Now, DaVinci Resolve Studio is interesting because this is where NVIDIA's CUDA acceleration typically dominates, but surprisingly, the M5 Max held up pretty well against the RTX 5090 in the Blade 16. I'm surprised at how close that 40-core GPU performed here. Adobe Premiere Pro, again, the M5 Max export is about 15% faster than M4 Max. If you're a creator that's heavily invested in the Adobe ecosystem, I don't see any other reason to look past the M5 Max. Finally, let's talk about on-device AI workloads. So I used LM Studio to test that out, and this is where the M5 Max's higher unified memory architecture and the neural engine, they really start to flex its muscles. So I ran the Llama 3.3 8-bit model, and here the M5 Max is about 16% faster than M4 Max. With the 14-bit model, we're looking at about 59 tokens per second, which is nearly 15% faster than M4 Max. But when you look over at the 32-bit model, this is where it gets absolutely crazy, right? The M5 Max generated 27.87 tokens per second, while the Blade 16 with the 5090 managed to only generate 23.35 tokens per second. So for anyone doing local AI development, running larger language models, or experimenting with something on device, this thing is a game changer. And don't forget, you're also getting the power efficiency side on Apple Silicon as well. Now let's address gaming, because let's be real here for a sec. If you're buying a MacBook Pro for gaming, you're probably making some interesting life choices, but I tested it anyways because the question always comes up. Can you game on a Mac? Now, obviously, the library is very narrow compared to the Windows ecosystem, but I ran two games at 1600p at ultra settings, so Cyberpunk 2077 and Warhammer 3. The question is it playable? Absolutely. Is it competitive with dedicated gaming laptops? Not even close. You're also not going to notice a huge difference from M4 Max, and that kind of makes sense since the GPU core count remains the same on both M4 Max and M5 Max. So yes, M5 Max can game, but if that's your priority, you shouldn't even be looking at the MacBook Pro. What about battery life? Well, in our light load test, it lasted for almost 24 hours, which is a huge improvement over M4 Max. You can see how it fares against the Blade, the Alienware, and the ZBook Ultra, and those Windows laptops have a pretty decent sized battery pack. So Apple's efficiency is still awesome, but Intel and AMD certainly have a lot of catching up to do. I am interested to see how well M5 Max can compare or will compare against Intel's new Panther Lake chips, because we're slowly starting to get them here in the studio, and so it'll be interesting to see how the battery life and the performance plays against each other. So stay tuned for that. Now, under heavy gaming workloads, battery life obviously tanked across the board. This is where every laptop struggles. M5 Max, M4 Max, they both came around an hour and 12 to 17 minutes. You might be surprised to see the Blade 16 lasting more than 2 hours, and there is a valid reason for that, and it kind of makes sense because most Windows laptops, the moment you unplug them, basically the performance drops. There's less power being fed into the CPU and the GPU, so that certainly helps prolong the battery life, whereas on Apple Silicon or MacBook Pros or Macs in general, the performance stays consistent regardless you having it plugged in or not. So it's still giving its 100%, which is something, and it's actually one of the reasons why I continue to use a MacBook Pro when I'm traveling for work, because I know that if I'm at a cafe or an airport or the airplane, I can still edit a video comfortably without losing performance. And that's something that's just really hard to find on the Windows side, even to this day. And to prove that, I ran Cinebench plugged in versus unplugged. Here's how it fares. And here's our Handbrake video transcoding test plugged in versus unplugged. Now, before we wrap this up, let's talk about the design, or rather the lack of any changes to it. Apple has been writing the exact same design language since the M1 MacBook Pro back in 2021. And honestly, I'm a bit disappointed. And now don't get me wrong, this is a gorgeous laptop, and the space back finish, it looks awesome, although it is a really terrible fingerprint magnet. So if you are concerned about that, skip the space black, get the silver model. Build quality is still impeccable, and the mini LED display with its 1000 nits of peak SDR brightness is still one of the best laptop screens on the market. But it's been 4 years, guys. Actually, 5 years. Same chassis, same ports, same everything. You still get MagSafe for charging, 3 Thunderbolt 5 ports, HDMI 2.1 that can support up to 4K at 240Hz or 8K at 60Hz, and a headphone jack, and an SD card reader. Now at this point, I'm just craving something new. There is a small quirk that I need to mention as I was testing this over the weekend. As I was running LM Studio, I noticed a weird coil whine noise. I'm not sure if it has to do with the neural engine, but I recorded it anyways. Take a listen. Yeah, it's really weird. I tried to run the same test on my M4 Macbook Pro and didn't notice any of that. So something to be aware of. The acoustic performance on the M5 Max is similar to the M4 Max, so the fans do ramp up under heavier sustained workloads, but it doesn't sound like a jet engine, so at least that's a positive thing. But yeah, it's certainly noticeable compared to the M4 Pro, which barely has the fan spinning up, so just something to be aware of. So who is this laptop actually for? If you're a video editor working in DaVinci Resolve like myself, or the entire Adobe ecosystem, including Premiere Pro, or if you're a 3D artist, a developer, someone experimenting with on-device AI models, this thing is an absolute beast. But here's the reality. This maxed out configuration costs north of $6,000. That is not a laptop for most people, all right? It's a very specific tool for a very specific type of workflow. If you're doing just general productivity work, web browsing, I don't know, if you're getting into lighter creative tasks, save yourself the $5,000 and just get the base M4 Pro or even the M5, the MacBook Air, or even the new Panther Lake options from Intel are pretty solid. You won't notice a difference. I should also point out that with Apple releasing M5 Pro and M5 Max, it's arguably the best time or the best excuse to consider the previous generation M4 series, specifically the M4 Pro, the M4 Max MacBook Pros, because Apple's still going to sell them refurbished at a discount, or you could probably pick them up at Best Buy for a really good price. They do tend to go on sale frequently these days. So yeah, keep an eye out for those as well. If you really want to get the best performance on a Mac and you don't want to spend M5 Pro, M5 Max kind of money, there's your option. I just wish Apple gave us a fresh new design with these newer laptops. But anyways, that's the M5 Max MacBook Pro. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm Eber with Canucks. I hope you found this coverage helpful, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.